Keisha has always been a person with a big heart. Since childhood, she knew that she wanted to help people. Her upbringing in a family where kindness and mutual assistance reigned left a deep mark on her character. She often recalled how her mother brought home neighborhood children who had no food and always found an opportunity to treat them to a hot lunch. This has become her life principle, to help those who find themselves in a difficult life situation. After graduating from university, Keisha got a job at a local charity that helped the poor and homeless. Her days were filled with activities related to food distribution, organization of shelters, and work with volunteers. She had seen many stories sad, full of despair, but sometimes inspiring, when people managed to return to normal life. These moments gave her the strength to continue despite the difficulties. Keisha lived alone in a small but cozy apartment in the city center. She was not looking for a romantic relationship and was completely immersed in her work. She enjoyed being able to help someone change their life for the better. Her days passed in a hurry, meetings, food distribution calls, sometimes working late. But even in this routine, Keisha found satisfaction. One day, returning home after a long day at work, Keisha noticed something that caught her attention. A man was sitting in a small park near her house, among old trees. His clothes were dirty, his hair was disheveled, and he looked tired. He was sitting on a bench with his head down, as if trying not to attract attention to himself. This was Marcus, a man who once had everything but lost it due to a series of unfortunate circumstances. Keisha stopped for a moment, watching him. She felt sorry for him. She saw such people every day in her work, but something about this man caught her attention more than usual. Maybe it was his posture. He didn't look like someone who had resigned himself to poverty, but rather like someone who was going through a difficult moment in life. She decided she couldn't just walk by. Going up to Marcus, she quietly sat down next to him on the bench. He did not immediately notice her presence, but when he felt that someone was nearby, he raised his head and met her gaze. There was hidden anger, pain, and fatigue in his eyes.
"Hi, you look tired. How long have you been here?"
Marcus looked at her in surprise. He's not used to anyone showing interest in him. Usually people tried not to notice him or passed by with an expression of disgust on their face.
"A long time ago. I don't remember how much time has passed."
Keisha felt her heart clench with pity. She knew that this was a man who needed help, but might not be ready to accept it yet.
"Are you okay? Can I help you with something?"
Marcus hesitated a little. He was ashamed of his position and did not want to look weak in front of her, but her kindness seemed sincere to him. He looked down, as if trying to collect his thoughts.
"I don't need pity, if that's what you want to offer. Everything is fine. It's just hard times."
Keisha saw in front of her a man who had clearly been through a lot. His face said that he had once been proud and confident, but now his life had turned upside down. She wasn't going to impose, but she understood that he needed help, even if he didn't want to admit it.
"Pity has nothing to do with it. I work for a charity, and believe me, I know how it is. Sometimes each of us needs help, and there's no shame in that."
Marcus looked at her again, surprised by her directness and unwillingness to just walk away like so many others did. He sighed and shrugged slightly, as if surrendering to reality.
"I've lost everything. Work, home, debts accumulated, and I ended up here. It's a long story, but no one wants to listen to it."
Keisha felt that in front of her sat a man with an interesting story, a man who deserved a second chance. She didn't want to put pressure on him, but she was sure she could help him.
"You know, if you want to tell your story, I'll listen, but if not, it's okay. Anyway, if you need food or a place to rest, I can offer help."
Marcus relaxed a little. He is not used to the fact that someone offers him help just like that, without expecting something in return. It was hard for him to trust people after everything he had been through, but there was something in Keisha's eyes that made him feel safe.
"Do you really want to help? Why?"
Keisha smiled and shrugged her shoulders.
"Because sometimes it just needs to be done, and if I can help, I help. That's what makes me happy."
Marcus nodded silently. He didn't know what to say. It was strange for him to accept help from a complete stranger, but something inside him said that she could be trusted. He realized that his pride should not prevent him from accepting what he really needed. The next day, Keisha came to the park again to see Marcus. She brought him food and offered to help him find temporary housing through her organization. Marcus didn't want to agree to help at first, but Keisha, with her warmth and sincerity, managed to overcome his inner barriers. That's how their friendship began. Keisha visited him every day, bringing food and learning more about his life. She learned that Marcus was a successful man who once had a good job, family and home, but a series of setbacks, job loss, financial difficulties and divorce led him to this state. He found himself in a position where the whole world seemed to turn away from him. As the weeks passed, Keisha became more and more attached to this man. She saw him trying to get his old life back. Despite all the difficulties, she offered him temporary accommodation with her until he found a job and got back on his feet. Marcus resisted for a long time, not wanting to be a burden, but eventually agreed. He knew he couldn't stay outside forever, and he felt Keisha genuinely wanted to help. When Marcus moved into her house, their relationship remained strictly friendly. Keisha never tried to break that line, although she felt that something more was emerging between them. They began to spend more time together, discussing their lives, sharing their thoughts and experiences. Keisha saw in Marcus not just a homeless man, but a man who had gone through difficult trials and deserved a second chance. Marcus, in turn, began to open up to her. It wasn't easy for him to talk about his failures, but he felt safe with Keisha. He understood that she was not judging him, but only wanted to help him get his life back. In her kindness, he found what he had missed so much in recent years, and although neither Keisha nor Marcus had planned for their friendship to grow into anything more, they felt the bond between them growing stronger every day. After the first meeting with Marcus in the park, Keisha couldn't stop thinking about him. His tired eyes, full of hidden pain and disappointment, haunted her. She saw him as more than just a homeless man who found himself in a difficult situation. There was something more in him: depth, strength of spirit, which under the weight of circumstances began to seem lost. Keisha felt she had to help him, even if he wasn't ready to accept it yet. The next day, on her way home from work, Keisha went back to the park and saw Marcus on the same bench. He sat with his arms crossed over his chest, lost in thought. She brought him food: a fresh sandwich, an apple, and a bottle of water, and despite his initial embarrassment, Marcus accepted it anyway.
I didn't want to force you to take anything. I just thought you might be hungry.
Marcus grimaced a little, feeling his pride take over again. But he was really hungry. He reluctantly took the sandwich and nodded his thanks.
Thank you. You're too kind. I don't know what I've done to deserve such attention.
Keisha smiled as she sat down next to him on the bench. She felt she had to be patient, not press him with questions, but she was curious to know how he ended up in such a situation.
I just think that sometimes we all need a little help. It's not about merit, Marcus. It's just a desire to help.
She was silent for a moment, watching as he began to eat, and there was fatigue in his movements. Marcus was not just hungry, he was mentally exhausted, and this was reflected in his every gesture. Keisha decided it was time to get to know him better.
You said you had a different life before. What happened?
Marcus slowly lowered the sandwich onto his lap and closed his eyes for a second, as if gathering his thoughts. His face was serious, and deep down he knew that telling about his life would be painful. But maybe there was some catharsis in it. He needed someone to hear his story, to share what he was trying to forget.
It's a long story. I was once a successful person. Work, house, car, everything that is required. I was a manager in a large company. I had a business, but everything has changed in a few years.
He looked at her and then continued.
It started with the fact that I was cut. I thought I would quickly find something new, but things got bad in the economy, and there were few offers. My savings began to melt. Then debts appeared. At some point, I lost my house, couldn't pay my rent, and then my wife left me. It can be understood I was no longer the person I used to be. Everything fell apart before my eyes.
Keisha listened attentively. Her heart shrank from his story. She saw in front of her not just a homeless man, but a man who once had everything, but fate mercilessly cut off his path. There was bitterness in his voice, but not only for the world, but also for himself. Marcus was clearly a man who was used to relying only on himself, and losing control of his life was the hardest blow for.
I'm so sorry, Marcus. I can't even imagine what it would be like to lose everything.
He chuckled a little, but it was a bitter laugh without joy.
Do you know what the hardest part is? Do not lose money or things. It can be lived through. The hardest thing is to lose yourself. When everything around you collapses, you start to lose confidence in who you are and what you can do. It's like an eternal fall, and you don't know when you're going to hit the bottom.
Keisha paused, giving him a chance to speak. She understood that right now it was important for him to be heard, not pitied. His story was full of pain, but there was also strength in it, the strength of a man who had not yet given up, despite all the difficulties.
But you're still here. You didn't break down. This already says a lot.
Marcus looked up, meeting her gaze. He hadn't expected to hear such words, and it touched him a little. He hadn't heard anything like it in a long time. Everyone around him either ignored him or treated him with pity, but Keisha was different.
I just exist. I'm not sure that this can be called life.
Keisha knew that he needed something more than just existence. He needed a chance to get his life back, and she believed that he had all the strength to do it. She saw potential in him, which was hidden under a layer of disappointment and pain.
Maybe it's not life, but it's a start. You can go back to who you were. I believe in it.
Marcus was silent for a long time, considering her words. He was not used to anyone believing in him, especially now that he had long lost faith in himself. But her confidence began to penetrate his soul, giving him hope that he had long lost. The next day, Keisha came back to the park with food, and their conversations continued. She began to learn more about Marcus, his dreams, and how he ended up in this situation. Marcus gradually opened up to her, seeing that she was genuinely interested in his life. He was grateful for her attention, but he still felt uncomfortable accepting help. But one day, Keisha decided to take a step forward. She had been thinking for several days about what she could offer Marcus to temporarily stay with her, so that he could get back on his feet. It was clear to her that staying on the street was not an option for a man who had once lived a completely different life. When they were sitting in the park again, Keisha decided to talk about it.
Marcus, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I want to help you. I know it's not easy for you to accept help, but I believe that you can return to a normal life if you have at least temporary shelter. Why don't you move in with me for a while?
Marcus looked at her in disbelief. This proposal was unexpected and caused him an internal conflict. On the one hand, he was grateful for her care, but on the other hand, his pride did not allow him to accept such help. Are you serious? I can't just move in with you. This is wrong. I don't want to be a burden to you. Keisha sighed and, looking at him with a soft smile, replied,
You won't be a burden to me. I'm not offering this out of pity. You're not a stranger to me, and I want to help. If you don't take this step, how can you rebuild your life? You deserve more than just to sit in the park and hope for the best.
Marcus fell silent again. There was a struggle going on inside him between the desire to remain independent and the realization that he needed help. He understood that staying on the street was dangerous for his health and future, but accepting Keisha's offer meant overcoming his own fears and prejudices. Finally, he sighed and nodded.
Good, but only temporarily. I can't stay with you for long.
Keisha smiled, feeling that she had made the right move.
Of course, as long as you need to get back on your feet.
And so a new chapter in Marcus's life began. Marcus thought about Keisha's offer for a long time before agreeing. His pride, wounded by years of failures and disappointments, made him hesitate. He wasn't used to accepting help, especially one as generous and sincere as Keisha's. It was hard for him to admit that he was no longer able to cope with life's difficulties alone, and despite his inner resistance, he still agreed to move in with her. It was a temporary solution, he told himself, a necessary step to get back on his feet and regain his independence. Keisha didn't put pressure on him and gave him complete freedom of choice. She understood how difficult it was for Marcus to agree to help, and therefore tried to make this transition as smooth as possible. There was a lot of free space in her cozy apartment, as well as the warmth and care that she was ready to offer him. She understood that for him it was not just a matter of housing, it was a matter of dignity and self-respect. Keisha respected his feelings and tried to support Marcus without violating his personal space. When Marcus moved in with her, he felt awkward. On the one hand, he was grateful for the opportunity to have a roof over his head again, but on the other hand, he was uncomfortable being in the care of a woman who offered to help him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was in a place he didn't deserve, and often avoided discussing his problems with Keisha so as not to look weak. He didn't want their life together to seem like a temporary refuge to him or her. However, Keisha did not give him any reason for discomfort. She was caring and unobtrusive, allowing him to adapt at his own pace. Their life together began quietly and modestly. Keisha didn't make any demands on Marcus, didn't try to invade his personal space. She took care of him as a friend, expecting nothing in return. There was nothing in her behavior that could make Marcus feel like a burden. She cooked for the two of them, and sometimes left little notes wishing them a good day before going to work. There was sincerity and kindness in her actions, and this gradually began to soften his barriers. Marcus tried not to remain in debt. He quickly took over some household chores. For example, he started helping Keisha with cleaning and cooking. These small actions gave him the feeling that he was not just a guest in her house, but a full-fledged participant in their common life. Over time, he also started looking for a job. It was difficult for him in his situation, but Keisha was there for him, supported him mentally and helped him compile a resume, as well as looking for potential vacancies for him through her friends. She spared no time in inspiring Marcus and motivating him to return to a normal life. They maintained an exceptionally friendly relationship. Neither Keisha nor Marcus were in a hurry to cross that line. They both understood that the most important thing for Marcus right now was to recover and regain a sense of control over his own life. Keisha saw how hard it was for him to come to terms with the loss of what had once been his identity. She wasn't trying to fill the void with a romantic relationship, it was more important for her to help him find himself anew. In turn, Marcus showed deep gratitude and respect for Keisha. Her sincerity and genuine kindness touched his heart. He often thought about how his future might have turned out if he hadn't met her. It was hard for him to believe that there are people who are ready to selflessly help another person without demanding anything in return. Keisha became for him an example of that rare kindness, which is not often found in a world full of disappointments and selfishness. Weeks passed, and Marcus began to slowly regain his confidence. Keisha often talked to him about his goals, helped him make sense of what had happened, and consider future options. She tried to make him think that his past failures were not the end, that he could still start over if only he believed in himself. These conversations gave Marcus strength, and soon he began to look for work with more confidence. Keisha also found several temporary work options for him through her charity organization. These first steps were important for Marcus. He was able to feel useful again a person who controls his fate. These were small successes, but they gave him confidence and helped him overcome the feeling of helplessness that had been haunting him for a long time. Besides work, they spent a lot of time together discussing not only problems but also ordinary, everyday things. They shared their thoughts about movies, books, and discussed the news. Gradually, their communication became easier and more natural. They started laughing, shared personal stories and experiences, and an emotional intimacy arose between them, which, despite its depth, still remained friendly. Marcus began to notice how his attitude towards life had changed. He started planning for the future again, building small goals, and not just existing. Keisha, on the other hand, became not only a friend for him, but also a support to whom he could turn in difficult times. He began to feel that his life had meaning, that he was not alone in his attempts to find a way out of this situation. For Keisha, these changes were obvious. She saw Marcus gradually regaining his confidence and stability. She felt proud of him, but at the same time she realized that his successes were the result of his own efforts. She was there to support him, but all his achievements were his merit. This gave her even more satisfaction from their friendship and life together. Meanwhile, Marcus felt more and more grateful to Keisha, but also began to notice that his feelings for her had become deeper than he expected. He respected and admired her kindness and generosity, but now he began to see her not just as a friend, but as a woman who had become an important part of his life. He didn't know how to properly express these feelings, and he wasn't sure if Keisha saw him in that light. He understood that she could only see in him a person who needed to be helped and did not want to destroy what was between them. Keisha, in turn, also couldn't help but notice the changes in her own feelings. Despite the fact that she initially offered to help Marcus because of his plight, over time her heart began to gravitate towards him. She saw in him the strength, resilience, and courage that he showed despite his difficulties. She admired his determination and desire to change, but like Marcus, she was in no hurry to rush things. She understood that the most important thing for him now was to restore himself, and she did not want to complicate the situation with romantic feelings. Thus, their life together continued in an atmosphere of mutual understanding and support. Every day they helped each other, coming closer, but at the same time remaining friends. Marcus continued to look for work, and his efforts began to bear fruit. Eventually, thanks to his skills and Keisha's recommendations, he received a job offer at a local company, which was an important step for him to regain independence. It was a new stage in Marcus's life, and he was determined to move forward. But despite his successes, he knew that he would not have been able to achieve this without Keisha's help. She became a source of inspiration and motivation for him, and he was grateful for her presence in his life. As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between Keisha and Marcus began to gradually transform. Initially, their bond was based on gratitude and the help that Keisha offered Marcus. She saw in him a man who found himself in a difficult situation and needed support, and he, despite his pride, was grateful for her kindness and generosity. However, over time, their communication became deeper, and friendly feelings began to grow into something more. Their life together, which began with a clear understanding of boundaries, has become more and more natural and comfortable. They learned to understand each other without words. Their daily interaction became more harmonious and filled them both with ability. Keisha felt that her home was now filled with warmth and joy, which she lacked. Marcus, in turn, was gaining more and more confidence in himself. and this was reflected in his behavior. He began to realize that he could trust Keisha, and that trust strengthened their bond. At first, these were ordinary everyday activities, having dinner together, watching movies or discussing the news over a cup of coffee. However, these moments have become more significant. Every evening they could talk about something personal, share their thoughts and experiences. Keisha often talked about her work and how she strives to help people, and these stories touched Marcus even more. He saw in her not just a kind woman, but a person who sincerely wanted to change the world for the better. Her energy and commitment to helping others inspired him. Keisha, in turn, admired Marcus more and more. When he told her about his life before everything went wrong, she saw in front of her not a homeless man, but a strong man who had gone through a lot of difficulties, but did not give up. He was a man with deep convictions, capable of compassion and caring. In each of his stories, his desire for justice and desire to change his life were felt. She saw in him not just someone who needed help, but a person with great potential and dignity. Their conversations became more and more personal. One day, Marcus told Keisha about how difficult it was to get through a divorce and the loss of a family. This experience left deep wounds on his soul, and he could not recover from the loss for a long time. Keisha listened to him attentively, without interrupting, and she was hurt for what he had been through. But she also saw incredible resilience in him. Despite all the difficulties, he continued to fight, even when it seemed that all was lost. Keisha began to feel that her own emotions had become more complex. At first, she saw Marcus solely as the person she was helping, but now that feeling was growing into something more. She began to notice in him the traits that were dear to her: kindness, determination and respect for others. His attentive attitude towards her and the way he took care of his place in her life only strengthened her affection. Marcus, in turn, began to realize that his feelings for Keisha were also changing. He admired her kindness and fortitude more and more. He saw how she devoted herself to other people every day, how she worked for a charity, and how she supported him. But the main thing he felt was her sincerity. Keisha wasn't trying to be someone, she was herself, and that delighted him. She never reproached him for the past or reminded him that he was homeless when they met. In her eyes, he was always just Marcus, a man who needed support, not pity. Over time, Marcus began to feel more confident in Keisha's house. Their life together became more and more harmonious. He helped her around the house, cooked breakfast, and sometimes they went for walks around the city or the park together. Every moment they shared was filled with warmth and respect for each other. It wasn't just friendship, it was more than that, although neither Keisha nor Marcus had yet dared to admit it to themselves. One day, when they were sitting in the kitchen after dinner, Keisha suggested that Marcus read one of his favorite books. She loved to share with him what was dear to her, and books were an important part of her life. They spent the whole evening discussing literary works, and in that moment Marcus realized how much he appreciated Keisha. For him, she was not just a woman who gave him a helping hand, she was a person with whom he could be real. In turn, Keisha also began to notice that her feelings for Marcus were getting deeper. He was not only a grateful friend, but also a strong, wise man who taught her a lot. Their conversations helped her understand how important it is to have someone who can understand and support her. She began to see in Marcus not just a person she helps, but an equal partner with whom she can build a life. Over time, there were more physical expressions of care between them. Marcus was touching her hand more and more often when he wanted to say something, and Keisha was getting more and more used to his presence next to her. These touches were gentle and barely noticeable, but there was so much warmth and sincerity in them that both began to realize that their relationship went beyond friendship. Despite the closeness that had arisen, both Keisha and Marcus did not talk about it out loud for a long time. They were both afraid of destroying what they already had. Marcus especially felt responsible for not rushing things. He didn't want Keisha to think that he was using her kindness for his own purposes. He was too grateful for her help and respect to put it at risk. But his inner feelings grew stronger, and every day Marcus became more and more aware that Keisha had become for him not just a friend, but a person with whom he would like to spend his life. He saw in her the woman with whom he could build a new chapter of his life, free from the past and difficulties. There was a power in her that helped him move forward, and it inspired him to new achievements. Keisha also began to feel that she could no longer hide her feelings. She knew she was falling in love with Marcus, but she was afraid that he didn't share her emotions or that their relationship would become too complicated. She appreciated him as a friend, as a man who had overcome a lot, and did not want to destroy what they had already built. However, Despite these doubts, their bond continued to grow. Marcus began to notice that Keisha had become for him the woman he had always been looking for, but never found. Her support and care helped him recover as a person, and now he wanted to be someone for her who could give her something more, not only gratitude, but also true love. Their feelings gradually became apparent to both of them. Keisha and Marcus increasingly spent time together without having to talk about their emotions. They understood each other without words, and in every gesture and look there was a closeness that no longer needed explanation. Marcus began to think about how to express his feelings. He was afraid that his confession might change everything, but he knew that it would be wrong to hide his affection any further. He couldn't ignore how he felt about Keisha anymore. She became for him not just a friend, but something much more. A person with whom he could build a new, happy life. For a long time, Marcus did not dare to admit, even to himself, that his feelings for Keisha went beyond friendship. Every day he spent with her increased his affection and admiration for this woman, but he still doubted whether his confession could ruin everything. He was afraid to lose the intimacy they had built up all this time. Keisha became not just a friend for him, but someone much more important. She was the person who helped him find a way back to a normal life. She had given him faith in himself, and now he was afraid that his romantic feelings could destroy everything they had built together. However, his feelings only grew stronger every day. He began to realize that he could no longer stand aside and hide from Keisha that his heart belonged to her. It was a difficult decision. Marcus was afraid of being rejected, not because he doubted her kindness, but because he didn't know if she saw him as a potential partner or if their relationship would remain exclusively friendly. He respected her and did not want to inconvenience her with his confession, but it was becoming increasingly difficult to remain in this uncertain state. Keisha also felt that something more was growing between them. Her thoughts kept returning to Marcus, but she was in no hurry to openly express her emotions. She was afraid that if something went wrong, they might both lose the intimacy that made their life together so special. She saw Marcus as a strong and kind man who had been through a lot, and she didn't want to ruin their relationship because of her doubts. Her attraction to him was obvious, but she still hesitated, not knowing how Marcus would take her feelings. However, there came a moment when it became impossible to restrain your emotions. One evening, as they sat on the couch after dinner, discussing the events of the day, Marcus felt that he could no longer hide his feelings. It was an ordinary evening like many others. They were laughing, discussing something insignificant, but all the while words were maturing in his heart that he was afraid to say. He understood that this was not the moment to prepare or expect the perfect time for a confession. It was natural, like breathing. And at some point, as if on a hunch, he realized that he could no longer keep it to himself. Marcus knew that this step could change everything. He understood that now their relationship would either move to a new level or be in danger. But his feelings were too strong to ignore anymore. He didn't want to hide behind his fears. Everything he's been through over the past few years has taught him that life is too short to put off such important moments. Gathering his courage, Marcus decided to tell Keisha about his feelings. He chose this moment because he felt it was the right time. He felt so comfortable in her company that he realized that if he didn't say it now, he would regret it. He didn't know how Keisha would react, but he couldn't hide the fact that he loved her anymore. Marcus's confession was unexpected for Keisha, but at the same time it seemed quite natural to her. She knew that their friendship was gradually developing into something more, and although she was afraid to take the first step, his words were a relief to her. Keisha also had romantic feelings for Marcus, but did not want to rush things, fearing that her initiative could destroy their relationship. When Marcus confessed his feelings to her, she felt that her own doubts were dispelled. All this time she had been waiting for this very moment, when something would happen between them that would completely change their lives. After Marcus opened up to Keisha, their relationship began to change. Both understood that this was the beginning of something new. It was no longer just a friendly relationship built on mutual support. Now they realized that there was a real romantic connection between them. But the most important thing was that it was natural and organic for both of them. They knew each other better than anyone else. They went through hardships together and built a solid foundation of trust. Despite the novelty of their feelings, they were in no hurry. Their relationship developed slowly and harmoniously without pressure and hasty decisions. The most important thing for them was to preserve the sincerity and depth that was originally embedded in their friendship. They continued to live together as before, but now their interaction was filled with a new emotional intimacy. They no longer hid their feelings, and this brought them both great relief. Every day their relationship grew stronger. Marcus admired Keisha for her kindness, strength, and sincerity. He felt like he was becoming a better version of himself next to her. He realized that his life had changed thanks to her support, and now he wanted to make her happy. Keisha saw in Marcus not only a strong man, but also a man with a kind heart, able to take care of others. She felt protected and confident around him, and this feeling was new to her, but very valuable. They continued to spend evenings together talking and studying together. Now it was not only discussions of everyday affairs, but also conversations about the future. Both understood that their bond was growing stronger and gradually began to make plans for a life together. Keisha, who initially saw Marcus as a person who needed help, now saw him as an equal partner. She was proud of his successes and saw how he overcame difficulties, regaining his confidence. Marcus, for his part, was determined to build a life with Keisha that would be based on mutual understanding and respect. He wanted to be the person who could give her the love and care she deserved. He understood that their relationship is not just romance, but also a strong union of two people who are ready to support each other in any situation. Over time, their relationship only became stronger. They have learned to rely on each other, building their relationship on trust and respect. They supported each other not only in everyday matters, but also in difficult life situations. Marcus continued to work on himself, rebuilding his career and regaining his confidence. Keisha supported him every step of the way, and together they became a real team. Their lives were filled with joint plans and dreams. Marcus began to build a new career and was determined to reach new heights. He no longer saw himself as the man who was at the bottom. He became a man who was ready to move forward for the sake of his future with Keisha. Keisha, in turn, continued to work for the charity, but now she knew that her work not only benefits others, but also makes her personal life more fulfilling.
Over time, their relationship became what can be called true love. It was a love based on mutual respect and support, a deep understanding of each other, and a willingness to be there for each other in any situation. Keisha and Marcus knew that their life together would be full of both joys and over time, Marcus really managed to rebuild his life. At first it was not easy. He learned to believe in himself again, to rediscover those qualities that once allowed him to be a successful and self-sufficient person. Thanks to Keisha's support and his inner strength, he was coming out of the darkness he found himself in step by step. Now he had a job, a stable income, and most importantly, confidence in the future. Keisha was always there for him, and their relationship became the basis of his rebirth. After getting a new job, Marcus gained not only financial independence, but also regained his faith in his abilities. His new position was related to project management, which was consistent with his past experience, and Marcus was able to easily adapt to the work environment. He felt rediscovered, and now his goal was not only to build a career, but also to be the best partner for Keisha, as she was for him. Keisha, in turn, was proud of him. She had seen how far Marcus had come since their first meeting, and her admiration and love for him had only grown. Their life together was filled with new joys. Now they were making plans for the future, which included not only their daily worries, but also discussing more significant topics from joint financial goals to starting a family. Keisha saw in Marcus not just someone she had helped once, but an equal partner who could be relied on in any situation. Over time, their thoughts began to turn more and more often to the topic of marriage. Both understood that their relationship had reached a new level, and the issue of marriage had become a natural continuation of their life together. This decision did not come to them suddenly. Gradually, they both began to discuss their lives, the future, and in these conversations there was a common confidence that they wanted to spend it together. It was a moment of special significance for Marcus. Once he had lost everything, and it seemed that life would no longer give him a chance to start over. But thanks to Keisha and her love, he was able to overcome this crisis. Now that his life was stable again, he wanted to give Keisha what she deserved, not only gratitude, but also a promise of love and fidelity for life. He knew that he was ready to take this step, and he was confident in his choice. Marcus had thought the proposal through carefully. He wanted this moment to be special for Keisha, to make her feel how much she meant to him. That evening, when he decided to propose to her, everything was perfect. The dinner prepared by Marcus, Keisha's favorite flowers, and a calm, romantic atmosphere. They spent this evening like many others before, but this time there was something special in the air. Marcus was calm, but emotions were bubbling inside him. He knew that this was the most important moment in their lives, and he was ready for it. After dinner, as they sat together on the balcony, Marcus felt that the moment had come. He looked at Keisha and, taking her hand, said the words that she did not expect to hear right now, although she had long guessed his intentions. There was sincere love and gratitude in his eyes for everything she had done for him. He knew that his life could have turned out very differently without her, and now he was ready to link his fate with her forever. Keisha was touched to the core. Marcus asked her to become his wife, and at that moment she realized that all the difficulties they had gone through together had led them to this wonderful moment. Her heart was overflowing with joy, and she didn't hesitate for a second to answer. Yes, it was just as important to her as it was to Marcus. She knew that their love had been through trials, and now they were both ready to start a new stage of life as spouses. The wedding planning took place in a joyful and calm atmosphere. They did not aspire to a big and magnificent celebration. It was important for them that this day reflected their path and their feelings for each other. They chose a cozy ceremony with their closest friends and family. All they needed was to be together and share this moment with those who had supported them throughout their history together. The wedding day was the culmination of their relationship. Keisha looked dazzling in her simple but elegant wedding dress. Marcus, in a formal suit, was full of pride and joy. Everyone who attended the ceremony saw their love and respect for each other. This wedding was not just a marriage, but a symbol of their common victory over the difficulties they had overcome together. Their union, born of friendship and mutual support, became an example of how love and kindness can change lives. Marcus, who had once lost everything, now stood next to Keisha, feeling that his life had finally found the meaning he had been looking for a long time. He was grateful for every moment they lived together, and he was sure that there were many more happy moments ahead of them. Keisha, in turn, felt that her life had become full thanks to Marcus. She knew that now she had not only a loved one, but also someone who would always be there to support her in all her endeavors. After the wedding, their lives gradually returned to their usual course, but now they were connected not only by love, but also by official obligations to each other. It didn't change their relationship dramatically, but it gave them both a sense of greater stability and confidence in the future. They continued to build their life together, supporting each other in everything, as it was before. Keisha continued her work at the charity, helping people, as she once helped Marcus. She drew inspiration from their story, knowing that everyone deserves a second chance. Marcus continued to develop in his new job, striving to make a career and contribute to their common future. He felt that now that he had Keisha, he could handle any difficulties. Their home became a place where warmth and joy always reigned. They shared with each other everything that happened in their lives, discussed plans for the future, and built their dreams together. Now their lives were connected not only by the past, but also by the future they were building together. Their story has become an example of how kindness and support can lead to true love. She showed that even the most difficult difficulties can be overcome if there is someone nearby who is ready to lend a shoulder and go together to the end. Keisha and Marcus have been through a lot, but it has only made their union stronger. Now they were not only a couple, but also a real team, ready to face all the challenges of life together. The conclusion of their marriage was the beginning of a new stage, where they were both ready for new challenges, but already as spouses. The difficulties they went through together made them stronger and their love deeper. Now they knew that they could cope with any challenges, and were confident that their union would be long and strong.